Greetings and salutations, all you truly gorgeous individuals. It's another episode of League Online here, and Mark here with you fine and feathered folks we're getting spoiled at this point with this rivalry. It used to be such a rarity, T1 versus GenG. Maybe you get two regular season matchups, maybe you get a finals showdown, semifinals, but lately, going back to MSI, we're getting a series basically every week, it feels like, between these two.
I know your parents might tell you, too much of a good thing is bad. You can't just have candy all the time. I'm saying go for it, guys. This is feeling pretty good getting these type of matches, this type of consistency right now, specifically in the LCK. We are really enjoying this one, and I think we can't be the only one seeing this level of gameplay, this, close matches, and what is at stake for how high-powered these teams are. We can't be the only ones enjoying this stuff.
And listen, coming into this, obviously T1 had already beat GenG in Split 3. They're the only undefeated team in the LCK. They've been steamrolling even the stiffest of competition in the LCK. And then you see how Game 1 gets going, and not only does T1 win, I was trying to picture, when was the last time you saw GenG get styled on and dumpstered this hard? And I don't even know if it's been in the Chovy era.
I don't think it has been. I hope someone can really dig down deep into the files, find the game that it is in that type of way. And I want to know exactly what happened there, because it's so improbable for a team that has been as solid, as consistent as GenG. This was absolutely a crazy series, and it starts in that Game 1 with such a decisive, overwhelming victory on the side of Team 1.
19-2 in kills, and GenG seemed a little checked out in Game 1. They're just getting realm warped right on their face by Faker and crew, taking them out. 3 of the 5 guys obviously go deathless. It was approaching, ballooning a near 20k gold lead, and that combined with how this rivalry's already gone in Split 3, and you're going, oh my god, is T1 that unstoppable? But GenG, ruler, gets the Yanara in Game 2, and we immediately see a pivot. T1 gets a little bit more than 2 kills in this game, and Guma tries to cook a little with the Lucian Nami to try and steal this game back, but GenG looked like Game 1 was a blip after we saw Game 2.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at that Game 2, it is much more so of what we were expecting heading into this series as far as what level both these teams were going to be at and the creativity that would be necessary to push you to that next level. Love seeing this Yanara pick come through a little bit more frequently, as certainly being tested, being pushed into that forefront pretty early into this release cycle for the pro play. Always like seeing the new champions involved in that type of way, whether we're debating if they're overloaded, overtuned, overpowered, whatever. I still enjoy seeing that freshness into it, so good to see that. And obviously a premier player like Ruler getting his hands on it is something to always check in on and see how he's utilizing it, see what's going on in that. And I think this is a pretty good example, this game, to take a look through it, but also an example of some of the issues that T1 does come across, and more so than any other team is GenG able to punish those mistakes that come through. I think that's the biggest thing that is coming through in this series, and especially in this win for GenG, is looking at the mistakes that T1 does make. And these are mistakes that can happen throughout various games, but the way that they are punished, they are taken advantage of and pushing against you from the side of GenG is something that T1 doesn't face from anybody else.
And, overconfidence can often be the biggest killer of T1, especially when they're kind of in a pretty good rhythm, in that flow state, getting undefeated, and then push a little too hard, and yes, GenG will punish harder than anybody else. And again, the Yanara thing, remember, this is still so early that this champion's been around. It's going to take a few weeks, even months, before the pros are actually mastering a champion. They're incredibly good and can pick up a champion quickly, but by the time they're, mastering, just look at Zeri. It took a little while. She was obviously broken on release and was very strong, but then guys started really mastering her kit, and it's like, okay, permaban.
Yeah, it always takes a little bit, and it's going to change and evaluate from the individual as far as then what you can pick up, then from the community and how things are going and how what people are learning and finding efficient or the best ways, but also that individual aspect where you feel out when you are feeling strong, when you feel in those power positions and what you are capable of. That's going to be something I think we see taken to another level as the familiarity increases for these professional players. But Unara was out for game 3, so it didn't matter about that familiarity in the all-important decisive game of this series. But what did matter is the draft, of course. And I have a first instant where I want to bring up the alarm bell on T1 and say, what are we doing in game 3, drafting losing lanes all across the board in this crucial moment?
Yeah, and obviously the kind of flex pick with the Ziggs and Corki comes in, and that has been a kryptonite of T1, is playing against a Ziggs, and both with the Ziggs on their own comp. I'm sure GenG knows that better than anyone else, and I was surprised how comfortable Ruler actually looked on Ziggs, and we know Chovy can play an absolutely insane Corki, but really, the pick ban, everything was important in Game 3, but it come down to the early game here, because you see Canyon get invaded level 1 by a Jax, and then Owner is 2 levels up from Canyon, level 6 to level 4. That never happens to Canyon.
And it's one of these things where we got to evaluate what is the percentage here, because Canyon gets himself back into the game, finds his way to counter gank, get these advantages on the side of GenG, and for himself to be irrelevant in this game. I think part of it is maybe like 10, 15% on Owner, not doing enough, not managing to push that advantage that he does have into more of a snowball in other areas for T1. But I mean, how many other times could you think of anybody being in the position that Canyon was in and finding a way to be relevant, to have that type of impact on the game? I think he's the only player that I would give that type of credit to be able to pull it back from those type of depths within a crucial game 3 in the series against T1.
And how does he have the familiarity with playing behind like that? This guy's he's always the one doing it to the opposition. You think he would have been like a fish out of water, having no idea what to do. But yeah, the one counter gank in the top lane where, he sits there, is kind of 2 steps ahead of Owner waiting for him, and that's all it takes to get him back in the game.
Back into the game and back into that driver's seat. And again, when you're in the driver's seat as GenG, it's even more of that power where you make that little slip up, you make that extra risky play to try and even things out, get an advantage, whatever. We're going to hammer that nail in as hard as we possibly can. And it's not just Chovy hitting you on the head with it. It's Ruler coming on in. It's Canyon coming on in. It's Duro and Keen. And they're all jumping in to smash that in. And it is a smashed game 3 for GenG, and they take the series. And man, oh man, what an unbelievable response it is. They must have known we came out with the power rankings yesterday, and they said, we want that top spot back. Put us back up in there. T1, go back down.
We're the main bulletin board material for GenG, who desperately need it. But Chovy picks up MVP for the series to still lead the way in the LCK with his 13th, I believe. And this is probably the most one-sided series that we've gotten between these two over the last month or so. And by one-sided, I mean every game was pretty decisive. There was a little pushback from T1. Again, the early games we talked about. For the most part, these were runaway steamrolls. Every game had a 10K plus gold lead for the winning squad.
Yeah, we have not seen that kind of work this way around in this type of series. We've seen maybe occasionally one of these ones only go 2 games, and then maybe is some pushback, within those games, but not enough at the end of the day. Never have we had a series where it is so overwhelmingly in one game and then even go to the 3rd game and still have that type of response here. It's just crazy. What type of world of paradise are we living in where this is, again, only a few short days, weeks removed from the last time we're talking about these two Titans going up against each other. And it's only going to be a few short days, week away from we're talking about another type of matchup like this in the LCK.
Yeah, and I will say, we've been highlighting and praising the formatting for the LCK and everything, but the carryover of your record from the previous split, GenG now, 22-1 or something? You think there's going to be lots of games, we're getting all these great matchups, but the standings, do they really matter? Like, GenG's going to be first. They're going to drop a couple series. They're going to be first. Maybe T1 can jump over Hanwha, but it doesn't feel like there's a massive stake for most of these series right now in the LCK.
I think having those records continue over, and what that's going to lead to is going to be kind of the lacking of what we normally have in the LCK, where it is this rush at the end of the year to see who is going to be that last team to secure one of the prestigious spots for this region heading to a world championship. I don't know if we're going to have that type of competition or if it's going to be close enough or whatever, because again, there are so many, and you're adding in that extra split, that spring split with a break in between and all these type of things. I think that is where something we might miss out on in the LCK. And the question is whether you would rather have that type of competition for what that is at the end of the split towards the World Championship, or would you rather have, I think, something like this, where we are having these type of matches between a T1 and a GenG, Hanwha Life, KT, and then you have the lower bracket and whatever. Maybe you figure out a way that you can keep this and reset the schedule, your record a little bit type of thing, but I don't know exactly how you want to massage that into the next format.
And let's be honest, it's less so a format issue and more a team going 18-0 is basically like going into the next round and you're playing a game on New Game Plus, right? It's a massive advantage.
GenG just did all the side quests. They did everything, picked up every little upgrade item. They've got it all. And then they're hitting it, New Game Plus and taking on the early game bosses, easy peasy. We'll see how this one plays out. But I think at the end of the day today, I'm stepping away and I'm saying we got a great series between GenG and T1. Very good. And again, gives us that extra motivation and fire on both sides on where they're moving through the kind of power rankings and jostling a position within the LCK.
We've had to look pretty far and wide for any good series over in the LTA and throw in the LEC in week 1, but we're at least we're going from mild to medium in week 3, and that's, looking at these matchups, you get Team Liquid versus Cloud9 to kick things off, which when they did this pick in their little banner phase, the confidence definitely wasn't fully there with UG, but he's not used to trash talk, and especially opposite of Sven. But obviously that's probably the most compelling matchup, especially with TL losing to Lion Gaming last week. And we see if they get smashed by Cloud9, then the faith is out on them and they are not the next contenders up.
Which, first off, that is the mismatch of the century for trash talk right there, is throwing fresh and green Yuji out there and having Sven out there on that side. And he could have even dipped into the OG Niels days of trash talk, and it would have been a whole another level coming on through. Actually really excited about this matchup, despite kind of how down we've been about Team Liquid and where things have been, and not maybe as high as I would have liked to have been for Cloud9 heading into this split. But I think this matchup can tell us a lot about both of these teams, and that's what I'm looking for, to see what type of quality this matchup's going to be. Not necessarily how much one team wins or whatever type of thing, but if it is, a Team Liquid winning, was it a hard enough test from Cloud9 where it looks like Team Liquid is rising up within the LTA? Cloud9 wins, was this a definitive win against a competitive team that can throw you up more so into that conversation with FlyQuest at the top of the region? I think that is going to be one of the things that I'm most looking forward to out of this matchup.
And this is the last week of the pick and play before we get into the elimination round. So if Team Liquid does lose, pretty decent chance we're talking about them starting this whole run in the losers bracket. No benefit of having an extra life. So actually pretty huge stakes for them in this series.
Absolutely, and this is a Team Liquid team that anything we have seen throughout the year, having that ability to lose is an absolute luxury you want to have for your team as you're moving through into that elimination format. I think at the same side, you can maybe play the devil's advocate there and say not having that extra life, having that additional fire and pressure underneath you, that it has to be this and one performance type of thing, can sometimes elevate certain teams, certain players to another level. So that would be something, again, trusting the coaching staff, knowing how to push with the Team Liquid players.
After that one, we're going back to kind of some mild matchups. Even though Surti versus Bwipo is a fun one, and I imagine Bwipo might not even play in this series to get your boy Gakko some action in the top lane.
I could see that being something, but at the end of the day, as someone keeping track of this within the LTA, I want to see that matchup. Give me Bwipo, give me Surti, and I think that this is one of those ones where Surti had a great initial week and into the starting role, and I think that getting to see more of him and getting to see more of him up against that top level, that established veteran presence that you have within the LTA in Bwipo is going to be one of these things that you want to keep track of this weekend in the LTA.
And again, when Surti picked them, said, we're just going to have to hand check FlyQuest. That's how we beat them. And Bwipo said, you know what? Surti's pretty good. Maybe top lane. Maybe you can hand check. And then we go to jungle and you go, And I'm with you on that one, Bwipo. Sorry, Audieland. Not happening.
Yeah, definitely. The gap widens quite a bit in that type of regards, but we all know that certain things can happen the way the game plays out, that maybe that's not even a factor whatsoever. So I think that, again, as far as these matchups can go for a squad as ahead as they are in the LTA right now for FlyQuest, this does provide a little bit of that spice, a little bit of that extra angle to get you to tune in.
100 Thieves, Shopify. 100 Thieves actually chose Shopify over Lion Gaming, which is interesting. I know Shopify's 2-0, but it's been against the two worst teams in the LTA. So this is kind of a battle of frauds. I think whoever loses this matchup, you're really like, yeah, they're not top 4 material.
And I think part of the question is going to be for a lot of people whether the recently announced 6-man roster for 100 Thieves with Dokla stepping on in, if that's going to be a factor within this type of game, and especially as well knowing that Dokla's got history playing against Fudge on the other side there for Shopify Rebellion. That could be an angle you're looking at, or whether that's simply just having another voice, another set of eyeballs within the training room, talking, coaching through with Sniper as well. We'll see how that plays out throughout this weekend, but I think that's going to be the interesting angle, and I don't blame 100 Thieves for choosing Shopify Rebellion. You're right. I mean, identifying through that record that they do have, it is against these weaker competition in the LTA, not necessarily so overwhelmingly impressive with their performances compared to what you saw from Leon and what you saw from Surti last time around. Absolutely, I'd be thinking this is where I would set my sights as a squad.
And the LTA is obviously going for the record lowest viewership of the split by wrapping up the weekend with Dig versus DSG. Mark, how many people are going to sit through the whole day waiting for that match?
I'm just telling you, I'll be there. That's about it. But I gotta be there, so I don't know about
DSG
everybody else.
One fan. It's Mark. He's the last one.
It's me and Toast. We're just hanging out for this one. But I'm telling you, it's rough. This is gonna be a lackluster matchup, more or less, in the expectations and everything like that. But I'll hold out. I'll hold out for that 1% miracle that it is something that we are not expecting to see.
The LEC, on the other side of things, doing things completely reverse. Their final matchup for week 2 action for them, they say, we're going to make people stick around because far and away the best matchup of the weekend, Carmine Corp versus Koi, who will have made their Split 3 debut earlier on the Saturday, but obviously a rematch of back-to-back Game 5s in playoffs, arguably the two best teams in the LEC. Finally, some Western League of Legends, we actually get an S-tier matchup.
And I think there's actually more than just one of these type of matchups that we're going to be paying attention to in the LEC this weekend, because I think there's more than a few sickos like me that are out there always keeping track of your boy FNC Poby. We are absolutely going to be going crazy watching those, of course, and keeping track of how he does and whether his performance is up to the T1 standard or not type of thing. We're going to be keeping track of that one. And of course, even before that, before we get to that Carmine Corp KC matchup, there is a Movistar Koi matchup against Giant X. That's going to be the one that sets us up. And so I'm looking at that matchup to start out and see if Movistar Koi can get out to that right step before you step into that high-pressure rivalry matchup where there is extra pressure on the side of Carmine Corp this time around to prove yourself, to get over top of Movistar Koi here early in the split after the way things went out in spring.
And obviously, number one, let's see the viewership difference with G2 and Koi playing here versus
no.
in week one. And number two, you heard all of the kind of preseason scrim rumors, and it was that both G2 and Koi took a bit of an extended break, understandably so, after the absolutely insane schedule that we talked about multiple times in July. But let's see how rusty they are, Let's see, there's a new champion that's going to be rolling into things that we've already highlighted. And even we've seen teams take 1 to 2 weeks away and things can be completely different, either good or bad.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the important thing. And I think judging off of the players is going to be one of the important things to understand about it. G2, I'm a little unsure about because I don't know how many times they've been given this type of freedom, this type of recuperation period after something like this. And when on the flip side, I'd be looking at Movistar Koi. I got my guy, Jojo Pyun. He's chilling. He's always good with time off, baby. He'll be back. And he'll be ready to play for Movistar Koi. I got no doubts about that type of one. I think it is going to be fascinating because both of these teams, G2 and Movistar Koi, will of course be the focus of the weekend. Doesn't mean that there won't be attention on squads like Carmine Corp, like Fnatic, as I talked about. But those two being the ones that represented, and frankly, disappointed on the international stage, left you wanting a ton more. You're going to have to see that from them starting here, this split around in the LEC.
Yeah, and obviously, KC and Fnatic kind of they've got their 2-0 starts. Fnatic's going up against BDS, who are 1-0. Again, very small sample size and beating some of these lower tier teams. But absolutely, you alluded to Poby. I think everyone is paying even more attention to Fnatic than when Humanoid was there, even though Humanoid had that pop-off potential we know. I think Poby has kind of evolved from just kind of being a meme pickup to now I think everyone's fully rooting for this guy to play at a high level, probably because he's been so criticized in the past.
Absolutely. I think that's a major part of it. I don't think anybody is immune to wanting to see someone beat the expectations, beat what everyone says you are and labels you as just only this and says that's your potential. Of course you want to see the story where it's taken over, and especially for a guy like Poby, who's, relatively quiet, nice kid.
Unwarranted criticism most of the time, by the way.
Right, there is absolutely room to have these jokes, have a laugh, and pinpoint and be critical of some of these performances in the past and statistics and whatnot. But I think using that and putting it as the label that comes across these current performances and efforts from Poby is a little unfair, absolutely, and I'm part of that. I'll accept that blame for it. But I think moving forward, absolutely excited to see what he is able to do.
Excited to see his growth and actually get some good matchups in both NA and Europe this weekend. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, absolute beauties. Thanks so much for hanging out.